Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's MLB DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. If you're not already a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you get access to the model you'll see me using throughout the video. We also have a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder, and a private Discord server full of DFS pros to help you improve your game. For MLB, we also have the daily plug article, of which I'm a contributor, where we will feature our favorite arms, stacks, and bats for each main slate. Um, as always, you can follow me on Twitter at NickMarroDFS. But we got 13 games today, just a massive slate. So let's get into it. I'm going to go game by game as quickly as possible. I'm not going to spend too much time on the spots that aren't major priorities. But I will have a notepad file up, so towards the end of the video, I can kind of summarize the arms and stacks that we're going to be honing in on. But again, 13 game slate, massive slate tonight. I have Shohei Ohtani pulled up here, looking like the most popular pitcher on both sites right now, rightfully so, coming off kind of a sketchy game. But he is in a good spot tonight, I believe, against Seattle. But we'll get to him once we get to those later games. Just checking the model here, making sure we have everything set up properly. Just make sure you're selecting DK or FanDuel main slate in the slate bar if you are using the model. So you're not pulling in those games from 640. Obviously, those aren't a part of our slate. But yeah, let's get into it here. So the first game on the main slate, 7:05 Eastern. We have Tyler McGill and the Mets taking on Rich Hill and the Pittsburgh Pirates. We click over to the pitcher model, no surprise. Hill towards the bottom half, and McGill all the way towards the bottom. Really not much interest in either of the pitchers here. I will say Rich Hill's been a little bit better than expected, so I'm not rushing to get to the Mets, but they are kind of a borderline top 10 stack here. Just pulling up some statistics on my other screen. Things are loading slowly this morning, so that's not ideal. But yeah, we got Rich Hill here, doing a decent job limiting power, but he is allowing a lot of hard hits. So let's see here, 48% hard hit rate. Um, Getting enough ground balls to kind of limit damage, but not enough for me to feel confident in rostering him. And the big thing with him is the K percentage is just over 20%. So even if you do roster Rich Hill and he has a decent game, the upside is somewhat limited. But yeah, the Mets are without Pete Alonso right now. But if you were to go to Mets, guys like Tommy Pham, Francisco Lindor, Mark Canha, Eduardo Escobar all hit lefties well, but it's tough for me to really call them a priority stack here. We take a look. They rank 8th in OF Index, 6th in ISO, 10th in WOBA, 13th in implied team totals. So I would rather play Mets bats than I would Rich Hill, but at the same time, I'm really not all that interested in either. Then on the other side, I have really zero interest in Tyler McGill. The Pirates have come back down to earth, though. They're not really as dangerous as they were early in the season. If you want to use bats here, guys like Sawinski, Reynolds, Marcano, all fine as one-offs. They do have power against righties, but not a spot I'm really going to call a priority. So we can move into the next game now. Just really no major priorities. In the pitchers or the hitters from that first one. Next game, we have Daniel Lynch and the Kansas City Royals taking on Tyler Wells and the Baltimore Orioles. I'm just pulling up some numbers here. So Lynch has been half decent. Not enough that I think we're going to want to roster him, but at the same time, it's going to give me at least a little bit of pause against the Orioles here. I mean, he's only 6,800 on DK, 8K over on FanDuel. We're taking a look at Lynch now. Um, Really doing a good job limiting power, but he doesn't have much of a sample size in terms of his statistics yet this season. I'm getting a late start to the year. Um, So yeah, I don't know. I'm not all that interested in Lynch at all. I will not be surprised to see Baltimore popping as a stack. Taking a look now. Where are they? I mean, they're not at the bottom. They're not at the top. They're not in the middle. Where is Baltimore? Yeah, for some reason they're not even showing up in the model at all as a stack, which is a little bit concerning. Um, there we go. Okay, so there they are. They're just outside the top 10. For whatever reason, they weren't toggling with the DK slate. Let me just confirm they are on the DraftKings slate, though. Yep, they're right there in that first game. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather play Baltimore bats than I would Daniel Lynch. Guys like Santander, Mountcastle, they mash against left-handed pitching. Austin Hayes as well, another bat I'd certainly be considering here. Aaron Hicks kind of having a resurgence since he left the Yankees and arrived with the Orioles. He's very cheap on both sites. Not going to call Baltimore a top stack, but they are kind of borderline on a massive slate like this. They're not exactly a priority, but I do think you could get to them and feel okay about it. I'll go ahead and jot them down um, as a consideration, but they're really GPP only and definitely favor the right-handed hitters if you do decide to go here. I can't imagine they're going to run out many lefties against Lynch, though. But really, no interest in Daniel Lynch as a starting pitcher. On the other side of things, Tyler Wells has been a lot better than expected this year. 26% K rate is very healthy for him. Doing a decent job, but he is allowing some power, 202 ISO to opposing hitters. Um, but yeah, let's dig a little bit deeper into Tyler Wells here. Checking out his XFIP and just jumping back over to the pitcher page, he is popping as the second best arm in the model. So I did have a hunch that he'd be a little bit better than I wanted to give him credit for, and certainly the model agrees with that sentiment. So 402 XFIP on the season, nothing outstanding, but certainly solid enough to consider. Kansas City, just not the best offense right now. They really haven't been hitting the ball all that well. Their starters here are showing a 26% K rate against right-handed pitching this season, so just a ton of upside. And he's very cheap on DK at just 8,300. The 9,700 price tag on FanDuel not quite as appealing, but I certainly think we're going to want to get to some Tyler Wells tonight. So top arms, I will write down Tyler Wells. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's tough to trust him entirely. I just want to really emphasize the fact that he's been kind of exceeding expectations, though, coming off two really nice starts. I mean, he K'd 9 last time out, 7 the start before that. He has K'd 7 plus in 5 straight outings. So Tyler Wells showing a ton of upside. Pretty highly regarded prospect when he came into the league. Really struggled last season, but it looks like he's getting it right now. So yeah, definitely get to some Tyler Wells here, and the model agrees with that. Keep an eye on the weather in Baltimore. I think it will be clear by the time the game starts, but it does show rain in the forecast just prior to the game. So just make sure that um, things do look clear if you're going to be heavy on Tyler Wells here. But he's definitely an arm I consider. Baltimore bats are okay, not a priority. Really no interest in Lynch, just to kind of summarize that game. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we have the Los Angeles Dodgers with Michael Grove on the mound, taking on Ranger Suarez and the Philadelphia Phillies. So Grove coming off a pretty shaky start, really not all that talented of an arm in my opinion. Maybe he gets it right over time, but right now just not an arm you could trust, allowing a 233 ISO to opposing hitters, 380 WOBA. And this Phillies offense has finally started to hit the ball. We see them ranking as the third best stack on the slate in terms of the model. So I'm definitely going to want to get to some Phillies here. And this will be the first stack I actually go to the batters page and kind of show you guys which specific bats I think we need to hone in on. Um, Whenever you're using a stack and using the model, you can kind of sort by OF index, see which guys you should be prioritizing. So Grove is a righty, so no surprise that the lefties are going to be more appealing. He's allowing a 308 ISO to lefties so far this season. So we see they got 4 guys in this matchup with a better than 200 ISO. So those are going to be your priorities. That's Brandon Marsh, Cody Clemens, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper. Guess what? They're all left-handed hitters. So definitely favor the lefties here. But I really do like Phillies. Harper profiling is one of the best bats on the entire slate. So I'm just going to make a note too to favor the left-handed hitters. But the Phillies are excellent here. I have zero interest in Michael Grove as a pitcher. On the other side of things, we have Ranger Suarez. He's been half decent, but allowing a 184 ISO to opposing hitters. He's the opposite of Grove in that you're going to want to mostly focus on the righties against him. But the Dodgers aren't profiling as well as maybe one might expect. Just outside the top 10 here. If you are going to Dodgers, definitely focus on Mookie Betts, Will Smith, JD Martinez, and Chris Taylor. Those are their big righty bats. Obviously, guys like Freeman are essentially matchup proof. Max Muncy as well has power against lefties, so you don't have to avoid them by any stretch, that being the lefties for the Dodgers, but do favor the right-handed hitters against Ranger Suarez, who had a few good starts last season, but he's pretty much a mediocre left-handed arm. So whenever we get a mediocre lefty against a potent lineup like the Dodgers, I definitely more have more interest in the bats. So, really, really like bats from both sides there, especially the Phillies against Michael Grove. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we have Garrett Whitlock and the Boston Red Sox taking on Garrett Cole and the New York Yankees. No major surprises here. Cole's been a little bit shaky lately, but I do think he's one of the better arms on the slate. Fourth ranked arm in terms of OF index right now. Just pulling up some of his statistics. 25% K rate, a little bit lower than what we expect out of him, but allowing a sub 140 ice to both righties and lefties, sub 300 WOBA. So he's doing a good job limiting damage. The issue and the reason I don't think he's popping even higher is not only is he very expensive, but the Red Sox starting lineup only strikes out around 19% of the time against right-handed pitching. So I do like Garrett Cole here. Not going to call him a top priority, but he's certainly an arm I'd have in my pitcher pool. Someone you can mix in, and he is drawing ownership on both sites, but where he's like 2K, 3K more than Tyler Wells. I think I'd rather go to Wells today for the discount. But that being said, I mean, Garrett Cole's certainly a solid play here against Boston. On the other side of things, we have Garrett Whitlock taking on the Yankees. Um, Yankees are without Aaron Judge right now. They're pretty banged up. So you get guys like Willie Calhoun, Billy McKinney, Jake Bauers in the lineup. So it's just not a great lineup for the Yankees. So I imagine they will not pot very highly in terms of stacks. But I do respect the offense enough not to want to get to Whitlock, who hasn't been very great. Allowing a 232 ISO to opposing hitters, 360 WOBA, just not the type of arm you usually want to hone in on. So he's very low in the model. We're also seeing Yankee bats fairly low in the model. I could see maybe using some Yankees as one-offs, guys like Stanton, Rizzo, Jake Bauers seems locked in right now. He's very cheap, but otherwise really just tough to prioritize anything. Um, from that side of this game. If there's anything here we like, it is Garrett Cole. Solid option, but very expensive. And if his ownership's down, though, I do like him a lot. So definitely keep an eye on that. Another game where we might have some weather to keep an eye on. So just keep that in mind. But for me, as things stand, the one thing I like in this game is Garrett Cole, and that is under the assumption that he won't be the most popular arm on either site. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we have Sonny Gray and the Minnesota Twins taking on Yusei Kikuchi and the Toronto Blue Jays. So Sonny Gray coming off a terrible, uh, maybe not terrible, but not a great start where he allowed 3 earned runs, only struck out 2 Cleveland Guardians. I'm just pulling up statistics for this one right now. Um, Excuse me. So Gray on the season, 25% K rate, not bad. Limiting the ISO of opposing hitters to a sub 80. But how can you trust him in a matchup against a Blue Jays offense that certainly does really good work against right-handed pitching? We don't see Toronto popping all that highly in the model. But at the same time, I don't know that I trust Gray. And yeah, he's just outside the top 10 here. So this is one of those matchups where I respect the bats, I respect the pitcher, but on such a massive slate, it's really tough for me to call either a priority. On the other side of things, though, we have Kikuchi taking on the Twins. Kikuchi, 254 ISO allowed to opposing hitters this season. So he is giving up a ton of power. And the Twins historically have been better against left handed pitching. We see them popping as the fourth best stack on the slate. So another stack I think is worth pulling up here, just kind of honing in on which bats we need to be prioritizing. But Minnesota is one of the better stacks on the board. Kikuchi does have some K upside, only 23% K rate this season, though. That's down from seasons past. We see him put up decent numbers on occasion, but more often than not, he is hit hard. And it looks like the Twins are going to be low owned here. They're also very cheap. So Carlos Correa, he seems locked in and healthy right now. He ranks third in OF index, but he's probably my favorite bat here. But we also like Kyle Farmer, who is a very high WOBA against lefties. Kyle Garlick, if he makes the lineup, just dirt cheap on both sides. Minimum price over on DK, and one of the better power hitters in this lineup. So I think ownership's going to stay down here. We see the team total under 4 runs, but the fact they're still popping in the model as one of the top stacks certainly tells you they're going to be appealing here. Really good large field high risk tournaments I play. I wish they had Buxton healthy. This is not a healthy lineup by any stretch, but as a result, we're getting them very, very cheap. So in tournaments, I do like the Twins. Definitely favor the right-handed hitters. Um, But yeah, they're just really cheap and they do have upside at low ownership. So I like the Twins. Don't have much interest in Kikuchi. And on the other side of the ball, Sonny Gray's good, but not an arm I'm rushing to get to. And the Blue Jays bats are good, but against Sonny Gray, I don't know that they have enough upside for me to want to call them a priority. Moving into the next game on the slate, we have Christian Javier taking on Logan Allen. Just pulling up some numbers here. I know Allen's been pretty decent lately. I'm guessing this is going to be a similar matchup to what we're seeing with Sonny Gray in that we respect the arm, but at the same time, we don't want to get to him, but we respect him enough to not really want to stack against him. And yeah, we see Allen just outside the top 10 here. He's been decent. Don't know that I could get to him against this Houston Astros team. 24% K rate. He's been much better against lefties. The only lefties the Astros usually run out are Tucker and Alvarez, and Alvarez is out right now. So that does limit the upside of this Astros stack, but it also makes it a softer matchup for opposing pitchers. But yeah, I mean, they're going to be righty heavy against the lefty here. Wouldn't shock me to see Houston profiling pretty well, but like I said, Logan Allen's been better than expected, so no surprise that this matchup's kind of a wash. Moving on to the other side of the ball now, taking a look at these Cleveland batters against Christian Javier. Jose Ramirez coming off a 3 home run game. So shouts out to him. Obviously, that was necessary last night. But yeah, they're one of the lower rated stacks on the entire board, which tells me we're probably going to see Javier towards the top. Yep, no surprise there. 10-8 on both sites. That's a reasonable price as far as I'm concerned. The Guardians, not the best offense outside of Ramirez. One, two, three, four, five. So 5 of Javier's last 6 starts have been quality starts. That's when you go 6 innings, allowing 3 earned runs or fewer. So I do like him here. I think he's solid. 26% K rate. The issue in rostering expensive arms against Cleveland, though, like I said, they just have a low K rate. So they're only striking out around 20% of the time against righties. I will say though, if Javier's ownership is going to be sub 5% on both sides, I think he's fine as a large field kind of tournament type play. So I do like Christian Javier here, but he has limited K upside. He's more just kind of a contrarian option. But I really don't have interest in bats from either side of this game. So we can move right into the next one here. We have Josiah Gray and the Washington Nationals taking on a debuting AJ Smith Shaver. No one pronouncing that wrong. And the Atlanta Braves. So yeah, the Smith Shaver guy, he's been decent in the minors. Maybe I pull up his minor league play page here, just to pull up what he's been up to lately. Really not popping in the model. Probably going to be on a short leash, but it is a good matchup. If you're going to be making your major league debut, might as well come against a team that's kind of close to a AAA team in terms of offensive upside, and that will be these Washington Nationals here. So just pulling these guys up. Um, let's see. Yeah, it's tough to get data. But 140 ISO for the Nationals against righties this season, 318 WOBA. But again, just another team that doesn't really show much in terms of strikeout upside. Shoiver, though, in the minor leagues, 45 strikeouts across 33 innings pitched this season, .94 WHIP, 1.09 ERA. So yeah, there's always an arm or two that the model doesn't like that I have some interest in. For me today, it is AJ Smith Shaver. And maybe I'll learn to pronounce his name if he puts up a good stat line tonight. But really, he's just dirt cheap in a favorable matchup. Um, Limited K upside from these national bats, but it's going to be tough to find quality value on this slate in terms of pitching. There are a lot of good pay up arms, but if you want to go down and really load up on bats, I think Smith Shaver is at least viable. I really have no interest in Nationals bats on the other side. But yeah, I mean, what we've seen from him in the minors up to this year, he's been a bit of a disappointment, but this season he's really kind of gotten it together, and that's why he's getting the call up here. So I like him. I don't know how deep he's going to be able to go here, so that may be the reason he's low in the model. I think he did make a relief appearance recently. Let's see. Yeah, he's stretched out. I mean, on May 25th, he went 7 innings, 8 Ks in the minors, but he got the call up, only went two and a third with 3 strikeouts on the fourth. But it is 5 days from that start or from that appearance. So I think there's a decent chance he could get into the fifth or sixth inning here. So yeah, it's a very high risk option. Not something I'd recommend if you're only playing a lineup or two, but if you're in large field contests, playing a lot of lineups, AJ Smith Shawver is at least worth considering. Definitely an arm to keep an eye on. He does have decent K upside. And obviously, he probably gets some run support here. So yeah, Josiah Gray, certainly not one of the better arms on the board. But yeah, he's done a decent job limiting power this season, but he's due for considerable regression. So I'm happy to go ahead and stack against him here. I imagine we see the Braves as one of the top stacks on the board. No surprise at all. Second in OF index rating, first in ISO, fifth in WOBA, third in team total. See that team total climbing up into the mid 6 runs there, looking at 6.4 right now. So yeah, really tough not to like the Braves here. Um, Team ISO around 190 against right-handed pitching, so we could jump over to the batters page, see which Braves the model has us prioritizing. But I really like this entire lineup, so nothing's going to surprise me here. Olson, Acuna, Rosario's too cheap on both sides. Very, very strong value play, whether you're using him as part of a stack or a one-off. Really do like Rosario. Albies had the nice walk-off home run last night. He's affordable. Azunia seems locked in. Murphy, Harris, Riley, Arcia, anyone in this lineup, 1 through 9, if these are the bats here, I like. It's really tough not to like the Braves here against the guy in gray who's been okay, but he's definitely due for some regression, and I think we do see it here in a really tough matchup against Atlanta. So, just to summarize this one, we really do like Braves bats here against Gray. They've been one of the best offenses in baseball. Gray kind of pitching a little bit above his head, certainly due for regression. We saw him allow 4 runs against the Phillies last time out. I think we see similar or worse here. And then on the other side, AJ Smith Shoiver, if you can stomach the risk, one of the better value options on the board right now, and maybe the model adjusts and he climbs up throughout the day. But for me, that's the type of arm I'm willing to take a risk on. Just know that it could certainly fail. So I like Smith over. I like Braves bats. But enough about that game. Let's get into the next one here. We have Yuri Perez in the Miami Marlins taking on Dylan Cease in the Chicago White Sox. So two high K arms here. Jumping over to the picture page of the model, Cease just around the bottom of that top 10. Perez not really profiling all that well here as far as the model goes, but he is a very talented young arm, so I could see maybe getting to some shares of him. But 8,900, 9,200 over on FanDuel. I mean, he's not really cheap enough to want to prioritize. Um, but yeah, he's been solid. I mean, he's gone 5 innings in 2 of his 3 starts, secured wins in 2 of those spots. But the K upside really hasn't been as healthy as we were expecting. And if you take a look at this White Sox lineup, they strike out 21% of the time against righties this season. So Perez kind of a borderline play, but not going to call him a priority. But he is talented enough for me to not want to get to White Sox bats. On the other side of things, we have Dylan Cease. Like I said, Cease kind of just in the middle of that top 10. 1.08K per IP, very low implied total for the Marlins here. Obviously, it is a favorable matchup. Marlins striking out around 23% of the time against right-handed pitching. Dylan Cease somewhat inconsistent, allowing more power this season than we'd like to see if you are going to be rostering him aggressively. 9,200 on DK though, reasonable price. 9,800 over on FanDuel. I think he's fine. I don't know, just pretty inconsistent. The K's aren't really there. The Marlins have been a little bit better than expected, but if he's only going to be 4% owned on FanDuel, I would like to get a few shares over there. 10% on DK, fine as well. So Cease is in play, but it's really tough for me to want to call him a priority. I will jot his name down at the very least, but um, kind of a large fields only type option or high risk, as we like to call it, occupy. High risk only play. So I'm not going to get to much Cease, but I really don't have much interest in Marlins bats. And then same on the other side, probably won't get to much Perez, but not a lot of interest in White Sox bats either. If Perez was like 1 or 2K cheaper on both sides, I'd probably have some interest. But on a 13 game slate, I don't know that we need to get that different if we're going to be sitting in that 9K range. So we can move into the next game on the board now. Looks like we have an opener for the A's today. Samuel Mole opening for Luis Medina for the Oakland Athletics, taking on Adrian Hauser and the Milwaukee Brewers. So Hauser's another arm I have some interest in. Model really doesn't like him here, but he's been really solid over his last few starts. Seeing a very low implied total But yeah, coming off a quality start, only 2Ks though, so that's the reason the model doesn't like him. It is a nice matchup, obviously, against Oakland, but the issue is he just doesn't offer much in terms of upside. I mean, 14% K rate is just terrible. I think he has a pretty high floor in that I don't think he's going to allow a lot of runs here. The A's starting lineup shows a near 27% K rate against right-handed pitching. But yeah, I mean Hauser just hasn't been generating the swinging strikes we need out of him to feel good about him here. So he's kind of a borderline option, but 6K flat on DK, I don't think it's insane to maybe get to him. Um, but yeah, I guess Hauser, but he has limited K upside, so I'm really not going to prioritize him by any stretch. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he did well here. But it's just tough. You need strikeouts on a 13 game slate. There are going to be some pitchers that post really big games, so it's going to be tough to climb the leaderboard if your pitcher can't record strikeouts. So on the other side of things, we have Sam Mole opening and then giving the ball off to Medina. Medina has been absolutely terrible. I'm interested to see if the model's weighing Medina heavier or Mole. But either way, I think you could get to some Brewers bats here. Medina allowing a 331 ISO to opposing hitters this season. And yeah, while I don't love this Milwaukee offense, I think they do have enough pop to probably get to here against the righty. Guys like Christian Yelich look excellent. Rowdy Tellez, Owen Miller, Willie Adames. I mean, it's not the most attractive team in terms of stacking, but I do think they're going to be relatively low owned. And yeah, other than Willie Adames and William Contreras, it looks like everyone's in the single digits. So they are getting some love on both sides, but I do like the Brewers. I'm going to go ahead and write them down as a priority stack. Um, but yeah, you could go righties or lefties here for Brewers against Medina. And just making a note on the Braves. Cool. So yeah, definitely get to some Brewers. Not really interested in anything on the A's pitching staff, regardless of who's going. But yeah, Medina's been terrible, so certainly not today. And like I said, I think Hauser's okay. You can maybe get to him on the other side. He just lacks the K upside we usually need in fantasy, so it's really tough to call him a priority. Moving into the next game on the board, we have an NL Central contest between the Reds and the Cardinals. Ben Lively going up against Jordan Montgomery. I'm just pulling up statistics here. Lively has not been terrible. He's an arm I think most of us wanted to stack against when he came into the league. Looking half decent though, and the Cardinals are much better against left-handed pitching. Lively, a righty, so they have some upside here, but not enough for me to call him a priority. But I really don't want to play Lively either, so this is one of those matchups where don't love the pitching, don't love the hitting. It's just kind of a wash on a 13-game slate. So on the other side, we could take a look here at Jordan Montgomery. I know he was a little bit banged up. Just trying to make sure he's stretched out fully. I know the model has some interest in rostering him here. So, yeah, he's been going about 5 or so innings. Did not miss a start. He looks fine. 5 strikeouts last time out. So, I think the model is going to be a little bit slow to adjust. So, we see Montgomery floating around the bottom half of the top 10 here. But the Reds did just call up Ellie De La Cruz, one of the most exciting young prospects in baseball. Also, Matt McLean. They're getting really good at bats from guys like Stevenson, Steer, India. They've moved Newman to the top of the batting order, which has been helpful as well. So I don't know. I see Montgomery as a borderline viable value option here, but I really don't have a ton of interest. I actually think the Reds do have upside against him. Um, Especially the right-handed hitters. He's allowing a 212 ISO to righties. So maybe get to some Reds here, but that's a high-risk play. Favor the right-handed hitter, high risk. And again, I'm just taking some notes so at the end we can kind of summarize everything. But yeah, I have some interest in Montgomery. So this is the opposite of those matchups where everything's a wash. I think you can consider both sides here. I mean, Montgomery cheap enough to consider as a value arm, certainly high risk though. And the Reds, I mean, yeah, with this new look lineup and these prospects they've been calling up, they actually do have some upside here. Ellie De La Cruz has just been outstanding. I am curious to see if the sites have priced him up yet. I know DK still has him floating around like 3K, which is ridiculous. 3,700 on DK, 3,400 on FanDuel, so still too cheap in my opinion. Um, would not mind getting to some LE tonight, especially on DK sub 4K. That is still a misprice in my opinion. But yeah, maybe use Montgomery here in large field contests, very high risk play. But you could also consider the Reds. So kind of a strange spot in which you could consider both sides. Not going to call either really a top priority, but definitely an interesting spot for sure. Not much interest in Cardinals bats or Ben Lively though. So moving into the next game on the board now, we have Coors Fields. And tonight we got Yu Darvish taking on Austin Gomber. Darvish obviously pitching for the Padres against Gomber and the Colorado Rockies. So Darvish kind of bottom of the top 10 here. Only 8K on DK though, which is very cheap for him. 9,500 over on FanDuel. Darvish is very familiar with Coors. He's capable of putting up a decent start here. This Rockies offense strikes out nearly 26% of the time against right-handed pitching. So I know it sounds a little bit crazy going to an Armin Coors on a 13-game slate, but I do think Hugh Darvish at his price is viable and high risk. Um, but yeah, obviously the risk is very, very high given the fact that he's pitching in Coors Field. I think the Rockies are also in play. So again, another situation where you can consider both sides. Um, but yeah, Darvish is a tough matchup even in Coors Field. So this is a high risk play as well. But on the other side of things, we're getting our top stack on the entire slate. No surprise there. Austin Gomber allowing a 259 ISO to opposing hitters, 400 WOBA this season. Really not good. He just has not been a very good pitcher. I think a big part of that is the fact that he has to pitch in Coors Field. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's been getting hit hard. And the Padres, no surprise, profile is the best stack on the slate. Number one in OF index, number two in ISO and WOBA, and number one in team total. We see that team total over 7 runs right now, which is just absolutely massive. So we could go ahead, even before we sort by team, we see Tatis and Dixon towards the top of the model, Machado as well. The Padres are profiling absolutely excellent here. Taking a look at their ownership, they're all very popular. But mixing in guys like Dixon are Dixon especially, he's very cheap on both sites. That's one way to make the stack more affordable and a little bit different, where they are very chalky. If you do go to the Padres, probably don't play chalky pitchers. But yeah, the Padres in cores, one of the best stacks on the board. Tatis is a priority. Love Machado. Gary Sanchez has like 5 home runs in 2 weeks. He seems locked in right now. So Dixon, Machado, Tatis, Sanchez, those are your priorities. Kim looks solid. Soto drawing a lot of ownership in the lefty-lefty matchup, but like I said, Gomber's been terrible to both righties and lefties, so no reason to avoid him there. But you gotta love the Padres here. Just keep in mind they're going to be very, very popular. So if you see that you're going to be playing a super popular stack like this, and you can even sort on the stacks page by ownership, both over 100% aggregate. Just make sure you're not playing like one of the chalkier arms. So um, yeah, I mean, you don't want to be going to Otani and Wells over on DK. Garrett Cole also going to be pretty risky. This is a spot where maybe you do get to someone like Dylan Cease, or maybe you do get really creative with someone like AJ Smith, Shoiver, however the hell you say his name. But yeah, just if you're playing chalky Padres, don't play chalky pitching in large field tournaments and cash games in lower risk stuff. You can eat a lot of chalk, but yeah, for me, I love the Padres here, but you're going to have to get creative with the arms you're using with them. Then again, I think the Rockies are fine. They're certainly in play. They're going to be very low owned compared to San Diego, but Yu Darvish is on the mound for the Padres, and I think he's borderline viable as well at super, super low ownership. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we get a nice pitching matchup between Luis Castillo and the Seattle Mariners taking on Shohei Otani and the Angels. So, starting on the Castillo side of things, Bopping is the fourth best pitcher in the model. No surprise to me there. 9,800 on DK feels a little bit too cheap. I like the 10-6 on FanDuel as well. He's certainly reasonably priced there. This Angels offense obviously dangerous with bats like Trout and Otani in it, but they also strike out around 25% of the time against right-handed pitching on the season. So decent spot for Castillo. I think he's fine here. Just going to check his game logs. He's been pretty streaky. I know we started the season cold, but yeah, he's coming off 3 consecutive quality starts, so he seems to be in top form. Castillo, one of my favorite arms on the slate. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. And then, yeah, on the other side of things, no surprise at all. The guy I put on the cover of the video, our top OF index pitcher on the slate here is Shohei Otani. So yeah, I mean the Mariners do have some pop, but when you look at them as a team collectively, they actually have one of the higher K rates in all of baseball, against righties or lefties. So against Otani here, showing around a 27% K rate. Let's see. Yeah, it's not letting me pull up Otani's stats, but he's obviously been really solid. 145 K per IP, best figure on the board in terms of K upside. Very low implied team total for the Mariners here. So they do have some power. You got to be careful with guys like Rodriguez, Raleigh, France in the middle of that order, but they also strike out a ton. So I really do like Otani here, but he's very popular on both sites. So if you do go to Shohei Otani and you're using him, probably can't use the Padres. Got to get a little bit creative. Um, if you're playing the chalkiest arm, don't play the chalkiest stack, and vice versa. But there's a lot of good stacks on the slate that we've talked through, so I think you could get to plenty of shares of Otani and or Castillo today. Just make sure you're playing some of those lower owned options with your bats. Moving into the last game on the board now. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in today. We have the San Francisco Giants with Anthony DeSclafani on the mound, taking on Marcus Stroman and the Chicago Cubs. So Stroh's been really solid. Issue with him, not a ton of K upside. 22% K rate on the season, but he will be boosted here. This Giants offense has around a 26% K rate against right-handed pitching. That is their projected starting lineup. And yeah, a really solid job for Stroman, limiting damage, under a 100 ISO allowed to both righties and lefties, under 250 WOBA allowed to both righties and lefties. So I know the model doesn't love him. That's because he doesn't usually flash a ton of K upside. But if we pull up his game log here, I think he's been a little bit better than expected, and I think we start to see him climb up on slates like this. 6 Ks last time out against the Padres, 8 Ks in his start before that against the Rays. So maybe if you're playing Padres tonight, you need to get a little bit creative on DK where he's only 8,700. I do like Marcus Stroman. But historically, he does have limited K upside, so it's really no surprise to me that he's not popping that well in the model. As for Anthony DeSclafani, he actually profiles better than Stroman as far as our model is concerned. He is cheaper on both sites. I'm just going to pull up some numbers for him. This Cubs team strikes at around 24% of the time. But DeSclafani, another arm with a very low K rate. I think he's viable here. Still a pitcher's park in San Francisco. I mean, not as dramatic as it used to be. But yeah, I mean, he's fine. Really tough for me to want to get to him just knowing how low that K rate is. 17%, one of the lower figures on the entire board. 0.71 K per IP if you're sorting by that column in our model here. But I do think he's borderline, and I do think he's talented enough for me to not want to really get to Cubs bats. So we are through the game by game. Let's go back and pull up my notes here. So looking at top stacks first, we get the Padres and Cores. They are super chalky. Obviously, they look good here, but if you're going to use them, make sure you're mixing in guys like Dixon who are low owned, or just using lower owned pitching, or secondary stack options, or very low owned one offs, even if you're loading up on Padres. But yeah, they're super, super chalky as they should be. Just make sure you're getting different with the rest of your lineup. Phillies against, who are the Phillies against? Michael Grove and the Dodgers like them a lot here. Definitely favor the left-handed hitters. Their best hitters are lefties, and guys like Schwarber and Harper, though, so no surprise there. Braves, I wrote down Gray bad. Definitely favor the lefties against him, but the righties look fine as well. I mean, this whole lineup really profiles well in this matchup. Really do like the Braves. Brewers, Medina bad. Really like the Brewers. Dodgers. Let's see here. Yeah, against Ranger Suarez. I was trying to remember who they were facing, but I'm favoring the right-handed hitters. But guys like Freeman and Muncy are essentially matchup proof. So I don't know that I need to really focus too deeply on the righties. But the Dodgers obviously look good almost in any matchup. Baltimore against Daniel Lynch. I think Lynch is due for some regression. Definitely favor the righties there. Guys like Mountcastle are and Austin Hayes, if he leads off, are appealing. The Twins are fine. Don't love the lineup. Wish Buxton was healthy against Kikuchi, but they do have some pop against left-handed pitching. The Reds here, let's see. I mean, Montgomery's been fine, but at the same time, I just think they're going a little bit overlooked, especially with the prospect call-ups they've had. And then the Rockies against Darvish, obviously a high-risk play against a very talented arm, but it is Coors Field. And then we go over to the arms. We got the pitcher model in the background, but yeah, I mean, we got Otani and Wells at the top. No surprise there, both very popular. Wells, I think the ownership in our model looks a little high. I'm hoping it comes down so I could get to more of him. I do like him here against Kansas City. Luis Castillo, solid. Garrett Cole against the Red Sox, not the best matchup, but he's solid. Chris Christian Javier, decent contrarian play, but limited K upside in his matchup. Same can be said for Marcus Stroman. Yu Darvish, obviously very high risk in cores. One guy I'm playing tonight, maybe you shouldn't, is this AJ Smith-Shawver dude. He's looked great in the minors. He's in a favorable matchup against the Nationals. So yeah, I do like him here. I'm going to get to some shares just because he's dirt cheap. Works well in Padres stack lineups as well. Dylan C's high risk only. He's been inconsistent. Adrian Hauser against the A's. I do like the matchup, but he has limited K upside. And then Montgomery, I know I said I like the Reds, but that's one of those spots where you can certainly consider either side. Once again, my name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you like the video, you want to see more free content like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Free to comment below. Always happy to answer questions in the comments section. And yeah, if you're not a member of Occupy Fantasy, check those links, sign up today, say hi to me in Discord. But yeah, these are the best months of the season. MLB definitely heating up. It's June, balls start to fly. We got more data now, so it's certainly easier to try to project these things. Baseball, obviously, one of the most variant sports in all of DFS. Once again, my name is Nick Morrow. Happy Friday, everyone. Have an excellent weekend. Let's have some fun tonight and make some money. Take care and good luck.